Peranakan always think they are fake Ang Mo just because they can't speak any Chinese. So, when they travel to China, they are looked down for being ignorant. When they travel west, they are discriminated for being a Ching Chong Chinaman. Best is for them to stay in Singapore and make kueh. It comes across as though you are bending over backwards to pander to those in power by stamping out criticism of the government and somewhat self-hating of others of your own race. That's the general vibe you give off. Why? Because I don't blame Malays for the problems of the Chinese and Indian working class. At least I don't blame the working class Malays. And I don't venerate the Tauke. And if you're speaking about Chinatown this way, where most of the working class Chinese come from, does that not make you a reactionary of sorts? You know, the kind of person that would be the target of a struggle session? Not to mention that your family were British loyalists who were wealthier than the folks in Chinatown. And you speak like a Cambridge-educated lawyer from the 1950s. Is this a self-parody of sorts? If you're really that committed to the cause, I suggest you put yourself up as a sacrifice to feed the hungry masses. If not, poser! Also, since you identify as Peranakan, are you not descended from the colonialist class as well? You talk like a cuck with small lanjiao energy. You envious, self-hating, lazy, communist, brainwashing banana. On a side note, I agree with the Damansara Bourgeoisie Club that you talk like a cuck with small lanjiao energy. This analyst 2212 says, if I were a man, mine would be twice or even thrice the size of your lanjiao. Okay, but why are we measuring phallic sizes? I don't ever recall bringing my phallic size into the conversation. I merely said I was Peranakan, not Chinese. Alright, let's see what Salak Sally has to say. You and Ian Mouse Banana should leave Malaysia. Can't even grasp the identity of your own community. You better leave Malaysia for UK, although you may be rejected by the women because it's the size of an acorn. My Bakul Siah is older than your gangster clan halls. You see this? This is a handmade Nyonya Bakul Siah that has been passed down in my family for generations. Now this has seen the highs and lows, the ups and downs of many generations of Straits Chinese. And it's mine now. So, before you tell me to go back to England, know that my great-grandmother's Bakul Siah is older than your gangster clan halls. And while my ancestors were here, your ancestors were on the boat. So don't tell me to go back to England when I am more rooted to this land than you are. And the only reason you can lash out at me in English is because my grandmother taught you that language that you wield against me. Hello and welcome back to the cruel, brutal and dystopian capitalist dictatorship of Kuala Lumpur. I hope you're having an amazing day, because if you're having an amazing day, I'm having an amazing day. And if I'm having an amazing day, you should also be having an amazing day. Today we're going to respond to some fucking idiot who accused me, who calls out Chinese ultra-chauvinism in Malaysia, who calls me a British colonial comprador. Like Comrade Lenin once said, the social chauvinists have become the Marxists. Let's go! Right, so you've probably realized by now that I'm not the most popular Chinese Malaysian in Kuala Lumpur, because not only do I not speak any Chinese, I only speak English and Bahasa Melayu. I'm unapologetic about this fact because I'm simply a product of historical circumstances. Now, if my Peranakan grandparents had wanted me to learn Chinese, they would have taught it to me. But they used English as their correspondence. They used English in all of their correspondence. they never spoke any Mandarin. They didn't speak Mandarin, as a matter of fact. They spoke a little Hokkien, but they didn't teach me any. And yeah, I just recognize myself as a product of historical circumstances, you know. But apparently, for most Chinese Malaysians in Kuala Lumpur, especially the Singke-coded sort of milieu that you see in Kuala Lumpur, I'm treated like some kind of defective product, basically. You know, someone who is Chinese-coded in appearance with a honey-toned tan, but at the same time as a broken toy that needs to be fixed or discarded. You know, I mean, I'm used to death threats, you know, because I say I'm a patriotic Malaysian socialist who has no particular interest in the preservation of the Chinese Malaysian identity. I don't really care whether vernacular schools survive the 21st century or not. I really don't, because I never went to one, and I've never been accepted in the Chinese-speaking crowd in Malaysia. So I don't really, it doesn't really matter to me. It's not of any material concern to me, as long as the Chinese working class have their material needs met. I think Chinese cultural identity preservation is simply a bourgeois concern. I'm a Marxist, not an idealist. My grandmother was an English teacher, and I followed in her footsteps, you know. English teachers in the colonial times were very rare from the Chinese demographic, but, you know, they were mostly Nyonyas, female Peranakans. In any case, you know, I'm not saying that one identity is better than the other. You know, I'm not saying that just because I am a Baba, that I am better than you. But what I am saying is that I'm different from you. Not better, not worse. Just a different lived experience. Because while your ancestors were on the boat, my ancestors were reciting pantuns and, you know, weaving Bakul Siahs and cooking curry before yours even arrived. So you don't tell me to go back to England when I'm actually more rooted than you are, okay? This isn't an assimilationist statement. It's a statement challenging the presumptuous arrogance by some Chinese Malaysians who think they're more Malaysian than I am because I don't perform Chineseness in a manner they find acceptable. No. Everyone, no matter what language they speak, how they speak in English, or whatever cadence they may use in English, is still 100% Malaysian, as long as they respect the people of Malaysia and wish the best for the masses of Malaysia, and fight for the interest of the working class masses in Malaysia. And no, when I say I'm going to tear down your clan halls and your Guanxi networks, it's not an attack on the Chinese community, but rather an attack on the unearned class privileges that some in the urban diaspora have retained. You know, I mean, the Malaysian left, you know, talks a big game about Ketuanan Melayu or Malay supremacy. And yes, while I'm fully in favor of abolishing race-based politics, and I'm fully in favor of abolishing racial quotas and policies that treat different races differently, I'm under no illusion that replacing the colonial master's whip with the Tauke's pen will emancipate Malaysians. When I say abolish class oppression, I mean abolish all class oppression. And that not only includes Bumiputra privileges that are weaponized by the elite Malays, while the poor Malays get crumbs, that also means abolishing Guanxi networks. You know, Guanxi is basically nepotism with Chinese characteristics. You give jobs or positions to people who went to the right schools,
or mixed with the right social circles, or speak the right languages. And yes, I am abolishing Chinese-only speaking spaces as well under socialism. That's not an attack on the Chinese community. That's simply telling you that you have to be team players with the rest of Malaysia. And don't bullshit me about how, you can just learn Chinese if you want to enter our space. Dude, if you can insult me in perfect Queen's English, obviously you're not illiterate in the English language, the language of Shakespeare, Dickens and the Bible. Your English is as good as mine. No, you're not speaking Chinese in front of me when I'm at work or when I'm, in a Chinese-speaking environment in Malaysia, like Tar College, because you can't speak English. No, you're speaking it because you want to exclude people. That's the whole point. Okay? If you can insult someone in Queen's English, you can jolly well speak the language to include everybody in the group. But okay, let's address what this guy had to say, even if what he said is delusional and deranged. Okay, let's see. He said, if you're speaking about Chinatown this way, where most working class Chinese come from, wouldn't that make you a reactionary of sorts? The sort of person who'd be targeted by a struggle session? Okay, first of all, not everybody who lives in Chinatown is poor, okay? There are many rich tauques who exploit their workers who live in Chinatown. So your Chinatown equals poor mentality is simply essentialism in a sense. Second of all, I think I've mentioned this a couple of times, but the amount of money you have does not equal your class position, at least in a Marxist sense, okay? What that means is that your money, the amount of money you make, is not your class position. That's a very vulgar, liberal idea of what class is. Class equals rich people, right? That's the liberal idea. But Marxists do not see class that way. Marxists see class, or the definition of class in a Marxist-Leninist sense, is your relationship with the means of production, okay? So, a street busker who earns $1 million a day, hypothetically, is not part of the capitalist class. He is an artisan. But a capitalist who earns $100 a day, yeah, he is part of the bourgeois class. Maybe you can call him the petite bourgeoisie. But as long as his money is acquired on the backs of someone else's, or on someone else's labor, that makes him bourgeois. That's not a statement of his moral character, that's simply a statement of class, okay? Class is not morality. Oh, now this one really crosses the line. Okay, this one really crosses the line. Your family were British loyalists who were richer than most Chinese people. Well, yes, even if they were richer than most Chinese people in Malaysia and Singapore, Malaya and Singapore, sorry. How dare you call my family British loyalists when my grandfather was kicked for arguing with a Japanese soldier? Don't mistake aesthetics for mentality. My great-grandfather wore a white linen suit and posed for photographs, but he was probably more rooted in this land than you ever will be. Because you cannot even respect your fellow Malaysians to treat them as equals unless they speak the same language as you, unless they perform culture like you, unless they are similar to you. So, who's more Malaysian, you or my great-grandfather? Now, it doesn't matter that he spoke like an Oxford scholar, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter that he used English as his lingua franca. What matters is rather, like, who the hell do you think you are to define who is a colonial stooge? There were plenty of people like yourself, you know, there were plenty of Tauke's who bowed to Japanese soldiers and got very rich off the Japanese as well. Okay, Yap Aloy himself was a Chinese coded Tauke who was basically an enforcer of the British. But you don't call Yap Aloy a British colonial, a British loyalist, do you? But you use the British loyalist line on me because I am a proud Peranakan and I am distinct. I say I'm distinct from you. I'm not like other Chinese Malaysians. Okay? So the Cambridge educated lawyer's slur, you know, was actually a subtle between the lines allusion to Lee Kuan Yew. Basically comparing me to Lee Kuan Yew, even though Lee Kuan Yew was Hakka, not Peranakan. But he was part of the elite anglicized Straits Chinese, right? Well, this pseudo-leftist here was comparing me to Lee Kuan Yew by saying that you can't be a real Malaysian Chinese leftist because, while you're not authentic enough, you see, you don't say la, ma, le, and you simply don't speak like one of the people. You speak like a British colonial officer. So you must be Lee Kuan Yew in disguise, who's really a secret elitist DAP type, right? You see, this is what counts as left in Malaysia, which is why I'm so fucking frustrated with the Malaysian left. They care so much about optics. They care so much about form, not substance, that they, you know, you can be the most elitist, classist guy who hates poor people, but as long as you wear a singlet and you eat bakute in a hawker center, well, you're authentically one of the people. Yeah, so all I need to do is talk like Pachukang lah, huh? So all I need to do is to talk like Pachukang and sound like Chinese Tauke, and then you accept me as authentic law. But you see, that would be forced. I mean, I'd be forcing an identity that's not really me, because, well, I was raised by grandparents who spoke Queen's English and who only spoke English to me. So naturally, I'm a product of my historical circumstances. It is not the consciousness of man that determines their circumstances, but the circumstances of man that determines their consciousness. Marxism 101. But the Malaysian left, oh, the mainstream Malaysian left is far too weak, far too idealistic and undialectical to understand this. I mean, first of all, you need to know the difference between form and content, you see. Now, I may not have the form of what you would expect of a Chinese Malaysian leftist, because you think I sound like an Oxford professor. You think I sound like Henry Higgins, and my ex-girlfriend actually said that I was exactly like Henry Higgins, and it's something that I relish rather than cringe at, because I consider myself to be, you know, a Malaysian with Henry Higgins characteristics, with a smattering of Oscar Wilde. Yes, with a healthy dose of Marx and Confucius as well. But it's not something I apologize for. It's simply me. It's a result of my anglicized upbringing by an English teacher grandmother. But the point is, you don't get to dictate who belongs to the left and who doesn't, just because they don't fit your purity fetish on what a real Malaysian leftist is. Oh, because I'm not I'm not shouting in Chinese in a hawker center, oh, I can't be one of the left, I must be a colonial relic, right? Oh, put myself up as a sacrifice to the masses, or you're a poser. Yeah, so apparently you think that you're some kind of red guard and I'm some kind of reactionary because I happen to speak like a British colonial officer. But mind you, may I remind you that most Marxists in history, like Lenin and Marx, came from the feudal or bourgeois strata. Yes. Most Marxists in history did not speak broken language. I mean, they spoke the official form of the language of their that they inherited. You know, I inherited the English language, the language of Shakespeare, Dickens, and the Bible, and I choose not to speak about you know, the Malaysianized form. I speak the official form. Marx was no different. Marx didn't speak broken Pasar German. He spoke actual official German. And he wrote Das Kapital in official German as well. That didn't make him any less revolutionary. Okay, let's look at his last statement. He says, since you identify as Peranakan, are you not part of the colonial class as well? Now, for non-Malaysians, this is a very confusing statement to make because they think Peranakan is simply type C with type M characteristics, you know, the Chinese with Malay characteristics that wears kabaya rather than hanfu, right? But what he actually means is not about Chinese sailors coming to Malaysia and colonizing Malaysia. That's not what he meant, because Malaysia didn't exist when my ancestor came here hundreds of years ago, married a local Southeast Asian woman. No. What he actually means, and this is for those in the West who didn't understand what he meant by colonialist class, was that Peranakans were closest in proximity to the British because they were sort of like the middle men, minority. Not too Malay, not too Chinese, malleable, right? Not really accepted as fully Chinese, not really accepted as fully Malay either. So the British, they naturally gravitated to the British, many of them, and like my family, didn't pass down any Chinese dialects because they thought English would be the lingua franca of the world. Now, is it wrong? No, it's not right or wrong. It's just they're just a product of historical circumstances, yeah? But the thing is, Peranakans came to be known as the Queen's Chinese due to our proximity with power, and it was us who were the middlemen, in every sense of the word, between the British and the locals, basically. The Malayans at the time of all races, learned English from Nyonya school teachers like my grandmother, and they would have gone through civil servants like my grandfather in order to get things done during the British administration. You see, so the point is, the Peranakan was the sort of like the go-between, the mediator between the British and the locals. But now that the British have left, we find ourselves at a very, very awkward crossroad. You either de-anglicize yourself and sinicize yourself to be accepted, or continue living like your grandparents, even if my grandparents never oppressed anyone, why, and then and become hated as a colonial relic. But the point is, it's true that Peranakans had some proximity to power, and that's why I speak Queen's English today. But it wasn't the sort of proximity that gets you the same power as a colonial master, basically. It's the sort of proximity that basically allows you to be a go-between. But unfortunately, I'm seen in the same way as the colonial master. You know, that's why I think many of the Malaysian left don't know what to do with me, because they are anti-imperialists. Many in the mainstream Malaysian left detest the West, right? And they look at me and they think, oh, you're a symbol of the West, you know? So you are basically a symbol of something we'd rather forget. But don't mistake symbolism for substance, because, you know, I'm as anti-imperialist as anyone in this country. I just do it on my own terms. I don't feel that I have to contort myself in order to make myself more palatable to anyone, because I'm the same sort of person as the Tunku Abdul Rahman or the Tanjung Lok tribe, basically. I'm an old school Malayan. basically who puts Malayan identity first and racial or ethnic identity second. So if you want to ask me, I'm Malayan first, Peranakan second, Chinese third. I should say that I'm more concerned about the material well-being of the entire Malayan working class, the entire Malaysian working class, than I am at your identity politics, basically. I'm more concerned about the material well-being of the entire Malaysian working class than by the identity sensitivities of any Malaysian group. If that makes me self-hating, why, so be it. Because the Malaysian left many times doesn't know what to do with me, but it's not their fault. It's because they also have a race essentialist idea of what each ethnic group is supposed to be. Like, I remember one time when we were rallying in Kota Damansara, and they asked me to hand out some Chinese language leaflets because I have a Chinese face. I'm talking about PSM here. And I specifically said I don't speak Chinese. I'm a Peranakan. I was brought up in English, and they said, never mind, just hand out the leaflets only. But if I had handed out the leaflets and I'd handed them to another banana guy, whether he's Peranakan or not, and he doesn't speak any Chinese, wouldn't he be alienated from PSM as well? You see, so even well-meaning Malaysian leftists sometimes fall into the trap of race essentialism, and the assumption is that if you are Chinese or you have a Chinese-looking face, you must speak Chinese. And so that's why eventually I got alienated from the mainstream Malaysian left. Not because I'm against them, I still vote for them, but I think that the Malaysian left doesn't have a place for me, frankly, because it doesn't have a place for a hybrid third culture child, who's a child of both empire and native soil. Anyway, I'd like to end this video by saying to the social chauvinists of the diaspora community, you will not silence me. You will not quieten me. You will not make me shut up because you threaten to kill me. If anything, your salty tears fuels my resolve, okay? Because I know that my great-grandmother's Bakul Siah is older than your gangster clan wars. And to the Malaysian left, wake up, stop confusing optics with identity, stop confusing optics with politics, and start getting serious. Stop tolerating social chauvinism or reactionary or fascist views from minorities just because they don't fit the Malay male Muslim template, okay? Wake up, Malaysian left. Okay, because I've said time and again that when fascism comes to Malaysia, it will not take the form of some bearded ustaz from Kelantan. No! It will take the form of a man in a suit in Kuala Lumpur rather than a bearded ustaz in Kelantan, okay? So stop basically confusing the boogeyman with the actual wolf in the house, okay? Right. So, thank you very much. Have a wonderful day.